certainly anything that can create a political resolution of the problem is desirable. Anything that can stop the bloodshed is desirable. The question for me is, are the Russians truly committed to the ultimate conclusion, which is a change of government where Assad leaves and there's a coalition of the different elements of Syrian society. If that is the case, that's good news. So it remains to be seen, and I'm hopeful at the end of the day. But you know, the bloodshed continues, the loss of lives continues, the displacement of millions of people continues, the challenges to neighboring countries like Jordan continues, and so I think time is of the essence. I am hopeful that a political solution can be achieved in a relatively short order. And if progress, real progress, can be seen in that regard, then it is something clearly to be applauded, something to be desired. But I don't think it prohibits us pursuing a parallel track of ensuring that we are in a position to change the dynamics and have a tipping point that moves us in a different direction in Syria via our legislation. There's nothing wrong with continuing that on a parallel track. And of course, since this is permissive and gives the administration the wherewithal and the congressional support for these actions and authorization for these particular actions, then I think it strengthens the administration's hands in its negotiations with Russia and others. What we're going to do is give a waiver to the president that if in fact he believes through his military and intelligence advisors that man-pads can be given to thoroughly vetted elements of the Syrian opposition, that he will be able to do so. The reason that man-pads is problematic is that they obviously can be used against us at the very time. So who we give these type of missile capabilities that, yes, can take down a plane, but also can be used you know, against our own forces should there be a need in the future, is of concern, that could attack our neighbors in the region if they get in the wrong hands. Because clearly, one of the challenges here is that we have not only the humanitarian disaster that is taking place, a great tragedy, but we also have the possibility of a failed state where it could become a terrorist haven for Hezbollah, which is already there and involved, for the Iranian Guard that is there, for the possibility of al-Nusra, which is showing extremist elements on its own, for al-Qaeda-related affiliates. That would be a safe haven then. Then you have the problem with neighboring Jordan, which has seen 20% of its population increase by virtue of refugees. The king of Jordan was here 2 weeks ago in Washington. We had a discussion with him, and you know, he talks about at the rate they're going that you could double the population of Jordan. That is not something the kingdom can, I think, can sustain. And that's a very important country to continue to preserve. It's been a tremendous partner in the region in trying to promote our mutual goals. So those are just some examples of why there is a necessity to act, either to find a political solution or to be able to give the administration the wherewithal to arm the rebels with congressional support that could change the dynamics. We also include, I think, some very other important elements that haven't been focused on. $250 million in a transition fund, which is to help the rebels to the civilian parts of the country that they presently have jurisdiction over, let's say, to help them in that regard and to prepare for a transition in the future that is more inclusive of all the elements of Syrian society. We also take some of the lid off, the ceiling off of the humanitarian assistance that the president can offer because we think it's important for him to be able to do that as needed versus having to come back to Congress to look for the money you know, every time that he hits that ceiling. And lastly, we are looking at the possibility of including sanctioning those countries or entities that would provide Assad with weapons or oil. And so we think it's a package that creates an opportunity to see the tragedy come to a close.